Welcome back, American literature scholars, and today we have this rather icky document from Thomas Jefferson, from Notes on the State of Virginia. I won't lie, I don't like this text. I can't say how Thomas Jefferson would feel about it today. He may not have amended his opinions even with history and learning. He never knew a Frederick Douglass. He had a pretty less than stellar opinion of Phyllis Wheatley. He did a lot of great things for our country. This certainly wasn't one of them. It's troubling here to look at the author of our Constitution and his thoughts on African Americans here. He says, it will probably be asked, why not retain and incorporate blacks into the state and thus save the expense of supplying by importation of white settlers the vacancies they will leave? Deep-rooted prejudices entertained by whites, 10,000 recollections by blacks of injuries that they have sustained, new provocations to real distinctions which nature has made, and many other circumstances will divide us into parties and produce convulsions which will probably never end but in the extermination of one or the other race. To these objections, which are all political, may be added to others which are physical and moral. The first difference, okay, let me just stop right there. He starts out nobly enough. He says, well, here's the problem. People say, why don't we just make the the Africans who are already here, the blacks, why don't we make them citizens? Why don't we turn them into Americans? He goes, well, here's the problem with that. I'm afraid what will happen is that the prejudices of the white folks and the memories of all the wrongs committed by them that the black folks keep in mind, all of the indignities, all the crimes committed, this would lead to a war which would end in the eradication of one side or the other. That's the only way it could be. A race war, essentially. So I'm afraid to do that. Sounds noble enough, and then he goes off the rails. Gets ugly here. He says, to these objections which are political may be added the others which are physical and moral. The first difference which strikes us is that whether the black or the Negro resides in the reticular membrane between the skin and scarf skin, or if the scarf skin, itself, or whether it proceeds from the color of the blood, the color of the bile, or from some other secretion. The difference fixed in nature and as real as its seat and cause would be better known to us. And is the difference of no importance? If it is not the foundation of the greater or less share of the beauty of the two races? Are not the fine mixtures of red and white the expressions of every passion by greater or lesser suffusion, the color in one of the preferable or eternal monotony which reigns in the countenances, but immovable veil of black which covers the emotions of the other race? Add to these the flowing hair, the more elegant symmetry of form, their own judgment in favor of the whites, declared by their preference of them as uniformly as the preference of the orangutan or the black woman over those of his own species. Wow. This from the author of our Constitution, who said, all men are created equal. Very problematic. And it's even bad science. It seems to be based on entirely rudimentary eugenics, which he's saying that, we don't know whether the black of their skin is surface or if there's something else going on beneath it, if they're actually, white inside. not exactly that, but that's kind of the implication here. And he says, we white people are superior because, our skin color changes with our emotions. You can read us. He almost seems to suggest that he's a little concerned about them because they're inscrutable. You can't tell. Black people don't blush particularly, right? And then makes a very unfortunate comparison to orangutans. There is nothing redeemable about this. I'm just going to say that off Jump Street. I admire Thomas Jefferson. We live under the blessings of the nation and the Constitution that he gave us. But wow, was he dead wrong on this one. See, the thing is that even brilliant people, sometimes it's even worse for brilliant people. They can't seem to get out of the way of their own ideas and their own intelligence. I get the very real sense that Thomas Jefferson was pretty impressed with himself. And, well, he should be. I mean, let's take a look at his home here. This is Monticello, as it appears today. Designed and built the dome. I've had the opportunity to visit Monticello once in high school. Even today, it is a wildly impressive structure. However, it was built also with slave labor, and here's a portrait of Thomas Jefferson, and as you have probably heard, his slave and sometime lover, Sally Hemings. I use the term lover very loosely. Okay, so back into the text here a bit more. They are at least as brave and more adventuresome, but this may be perhaps proceed from a want of forethought which prevents their seeing a danger till it be present. Oh, they're courageous. It's probably because they don't really have a lot going on up there, right? Yeah, they're brave because they rush into danger without thinking about it first, and once they're there, who can say? He also goes on to suggest that they don't feel emotion as deeply. They don't seem to experience grief like their white counterparts do. In reason much inferior, as I think one could scarcely be found, capable of tracing and comprehending the investigations of Euclid, and that in the imagination they are dull, tasteless, anomalous. It would be unfair to follow them to Africa in this investigation. We will consider them here on the same stage as whites, and where the facts are not apocryphal on which the judgment is to be formed. It will be right to make great allowances for the difference of condition, of education, of conversation, the sphere of which they move. Many millions of them have been brought to and born in America. Most of them, indeed, have been confined to tillage to their homes and their own society, yet many have been so situated that they might have availed themselves of the conversation of their masters. Many have been brought up into the handicrafts of arts, and some that circumstance have always been associated with the whites. Some liberally educated, and all have lived in countries where arts and sciences are cultivated to a considerable degree. Okay. What he's saying here is, many millions of them have been brought here to America, but none have produced a specimen who is on the order of Euclid, the philosopher and mathematician who gave us Euclidean geometry. He says, they've been around the arts and sciences. Most of them have been confined to their homes and to the fields, to the work that they were given. But many of them have been privy to the conversations of their masters, and yet they seem only to mimic what they've been told, and, what they say, what they've heard. Do you see the problem in the logic here? Yeah. We know from reading Frederick Douglass, or we will anyway, from the narrative of Frederick Douglass, that masters don't particularly like smart slaves. They certainly don't want educated ones or those who have been taught to read, because once you glimpse the larger world, you won't be satisfied with servitude anymore. you will learn about injustice and the injustice of your condition and then move forward. But he seems to think that just because so far none of these people have risen above circumstance and been able to produce mathematics, science, art, other than music, of course, then that they're not intelligent. Okay, well, but he does mention the Native Americans. Let's go into that here. He says, the Indians, with no advantages of this kind, will often carve figures and pipes, not destitute of designs and merit. They will crayon out an animal or a plant or a country, so as to prove the existence of a germ in their minds which wants only cultivation. They astonish you with strokes of the most sublime oratory, which is such as prose. Their reason and sentiment strong, their imagination glowing and elevated, but never yet could I find a black that had uttered a thought above the level of plain narration, never seen an elementary trait of painting or sculpture. Hello, Phyllis Wheatley? You heard her, you saw her works, you read her stuff, and decried it as just imitation. Not good, Thomas, not good. To justify general conclusion requires many observations, even where the subject may be submitted to the anatomical knife, to optical glasses, to analysis by fire or solvents. How much more, then, is where it is a faculty and not a substance, where in examining where it eludes the research of all the senses, where the conditions of its existence are various and variously combined, where the effects of those which are present or absent bid defiance to calculation. Let me add, too, as circumstance, the great tendencies which our conclusion would degrade the whole race of men from the rank in the scale of beings which their Creator may perhaps have given them. I advance it, therefore, a suspicion only that blacks, whether originally a distinct race, or made distinct by time and circumstances, are inferior to whites in the endowments of both body and mind. Again, this is the man who said all men are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Rights which we promptly denied to a vast number of Africans and Africans living here. Okay. Again, this is an icky and problematic document which is proven wrong again and again by every other narrative that we're going to study. Phyllis Wheatley, Sojourner Truth, Frederick Douglass, Harriet Jacobs, and so forth. Okay. So bear that in mind. Again, Thomas Jefferson was a great man in many respects, but even great men can be wrong, can be very wrong, profoundly wrong, foolish, stupid in their own arrogance towards their thought process. And unfortunately, that is the case with Mr. Jefferson. He still gave us the wonderful and great founding document that gave us the country we have today, and eventually, ironically enough, abolished slavery. And yet he was stuck in this rather icky and wrong-headed idea. So, it is not my goal here to indict Mr. Jefferson, to say what we should do with him. His history has already taken care of that. Time and mortality have swept him off the stage. He was a product of his time and the thinking of his times, and what we know now vastly trumps what he did. Great men even share the same problems as lesser men like myself. We are not consistent. We are deeply flawed individuals who just try to do the best we can. And so be it with Mr. Thomas Jefferson. All right, so that's notes from the state of Virginia. I hope you'll enjoy the next video. Certainly you'll enjoy the text a lot more than this one. So I will see you in the next video.